Hey up campers, Johnny Matthew here. I hope you are okay. Welcome back to the blog. If you're new, it's great to have you. If you're not and you've been here many times before, thanks for coming back. If you would like to support the work, you can do it for a fiver. Think of it as buying me a pint in a very expensive pub. Anyway, but of course, if you don't want to click one of the blue buttons to become a paid subscriber, that is totally fine. I just hope you enjoy this for nothing. So this is Object Permanence number 2. Some strategies to help support children and teenagers. Introduction. In the last post, we began looking at object permanence. The understanding that objects, including people, continue to exist even when they're not visible. We said that this is an early kind of fundamental milestone in cognitive development that infants largely tend to acquire in the months before their first birthday, before they can speak. So it's anywhere between kind of 8 months and a year old. We looked at some of the problems this brings with it if a child doesn't develop object permanence in the usual way, and that includes a variety of things that roughly fall into the areas of emotional and cognitive development, and we broke that down into a little bit more detail last week, so you're welcome to look at the post for that if you want some context for this one today. So today I want to shift things along a bit to be a bit more positive and look at some ideas of things to do and ways of being when we're working with kids that can help them recover some of the lost ground around object permanence. Strategies for supporting teenagers or children in general with delayed object permanence. Now, kids who didn't develop or fully develop or properly develop object permanence may be more clingy, insecure, demanding of attention than their peers might be. In some cases, to the degree where they behave more like a child who is much younger. Expect some of that in toddlerhood. But these kids may be much older, and yet given, even though they may be kind of verbally quite mature, physically quite mature, emotionally and cognitively, there may be some delays rooted in this stuff. But joyfully, there are some things we can do to support these kids, and I think this is why understanding what object permanence is can be really useful. So I've got 5 broad areas here, and there's a couple of kind of subcategories for each one. So in outline, consistent communication, the use of visual aids, gradual separation processes, positive reinforcement, and professional support. So I'll whiz through each of these in turn and just offer a couple of kind of subcategories of thought for each one. So consistent communication. So here I'm looking at regular check-ins and clear expectations. So regular check-ins. Maintain frequent and predictable communication to reassure them, the teenager, the child, of your presence and support. This is particularly helpful in residential or foster care settings, I find, where the presence of the adults may need to be reinforced, sometimes constantly, at least for a while. And I think the nature of changing personnel, particularly in a situation where people work shifts, can add to the challenges of this for kids. So being aware of it is particularly important for us. And being especially alive to this issue is important when children have just moved home and may need more grace than most kids their age. For example, who are just moving house with their family to get used to a new place. But the kids that we work with are often getting used to new people as well. Often difficult, crisis-orientated family situations that precipitate moves or negative experiences that mean they've had to move to a new home. So this is not just a physical move with the family that we've all experienced at one time or another, but it's a new place, a new home, and with new people. So regular check-ins around this can be really helpful, particularly with designated key workers and people like that who are important in a slightly more focused way to the child. And then clear expectations. Set and communicate clear plans and routines to provide a sense of stability, and then stick to them. I mean, following through with the plan is really important, at least if not more important than making the plan in the first place. Better not to verbalize a plan than to verbalize one and then not stick to it. So, but involve children in decision making as much as possible. Don't change things without warning, especially at the last minute, if you can absolutely help it. But if you do have to change things, I mean, stuff happens in life and we do need to change things. Please don't dismiss their reactions to those changes. This is not an isolated behavior without context. The context is generally a lack of safety. Specifically, I'm going to struggle with change. I'm going to struggle if I don't know when you're coming back or who's going to be with me or how the day's going to unfold. That can feel genuinely risky. So again, as always, you probably get tired of hearing me say it, but lean in, empathize, and be kind. So consistent communication. Secondly, use of visual aids. So I'm going to mention here calendars, timetables, that sort of thing, and photographs. So calendars and timetables. Be creative with visual schedules, diaries, calendars, or routines to help kids anticipate events and understand time frames. This can be really helpful. I was in a children's residential home recently, and there was just a little A4 whiteboard on a kind of little stand. It was quite discreet, and it's, among other things, photographs and so on. And it just had what is happening on each day of the week in outline, and then a list of his sort of jobs around the house underneath, and the times against them. And it wasn't massive, it didn't look ridiculous, it was just there in amongst other things, but it was set on the sideboard, it's visual. That sort of thing can be really helpful because pictures and visual cues work better than words for some kids, so adapt to suit them. It's a lot easier to drop in a gentle reminder about something visual and explicit than it is to verbally keep queuing them up. You know, have you done this? Remember that. Don't forget. Yeah, that relies on them holding things, appointments, etc., in their heads, which they may not be great at if this issue of object permanence has been a problem for them. They haven't got used to holding things in mind and will really benefit from those visual cues. Photographs, obviously, are a brilliant visual cue. Using pictures of family members, friends, carers, and familiar places, memories, to reinforce the continuity of people and places. Those little visual cues being constantly on display can help kids to settle, and it reminds them that things continue even though they're not continuing now in an immediate and obviously present sense. I can't see it, can't see this person, but hey, look, there's a photo there. That in itself can help embed a mental representation of a person who isn't present. It's a kind of halfway house between complete absence, can't see them, and complete presence. They're here with me. It's that they are visually here with me through a photograph. And that can work, again, particularly well in residential and foster care settings. And especially, I think, at the beginning of new periods in a new home, for example, where kids are trying to familiarise themselves not only with the place, but with the people who are there, but also the people who are not there, birth family members, and so on. So, consistent communication and visual aids. I'm going to have a quick slurp of my coffee, and then we'll come back and carry on. All right, so we've looked at consistent communication, use of visual aids. Thirdly, gradual separation practices. So I'm going to look at short absences and transitional objects. Short absences. Practice brief separations followed by returns to build a sense that absences are temporary. So leave the room, for example, but keep talking as you do so. And that can show kids that you are there, even though they can't see you, because they can hear you. And that, again, is a kind of halfway house, gradual kind of in vivo exposure to physical absence, whilst giving some clear cue that even though you're not in the room, you are still there in the world. You kind of ontologically continue to exist, even though the child can't see you. Or just say something like, I'm just nipping in the kitchen to do X, Y, Z. I'll be back in 2 minutes. And then off you go. Try that. But just make sure you do come back and do it in a timely way, you know. Don't be distracted or let things drift. And I think certainly at the outset, when we're finding our way in this, let's not respond negatively if they follow us into the kitchen. You know, they may need to do that for a while before they can handle the visible separation. But it'll come. So I think it's important in this way to help kids, to let kids help us determine the pace of how quick we go in these things. So short absences like that leave and return stuff is really good and really important. And then transitional objects. So encourage the use of items like a favourite object, a toy, to provide comfort during separations, during transitions to new places in the day, or leave something of yours with the child while you're away, you know, a hanky, a pen, anything. It's the fact that it's yours and they associate it with you that matters. It's not what the thing is. It can be absolutely anything. Photos in their bag. So a photo, not just as a visual aid and reminder, but as a transitional object can be useful. Or a photo on the home screen of their phone, of course, can help. Although the obvious caveat to that is that teenagers who are too cool for school might want to resist that if it's something that's not cool. But then it doesn't need to be a lovey-dovey picture of someone who's at home when they're in school that they want to remember. It could be something associated with that person or that situation that comforts the child. So something of the person, place, or whatever goes with me, the child. I don't need the present visual reality to be with me because I've got this transitional object, this representation of this person, place, or thing to help me build and maintain a mental representation of it. I can't hold it in my head yet. I can't persuade myself that all is well because I've got this person in my head like we all would. But what I have got is I've learned slowly through short absences, and I've got this picture or I've got this object that helps me keep them a little bit closer and helps to build and boost that mental representation so that I can cope with the absences more effectively. So we've got consistent communication, use of visual aids, gradual separation practices. Then fourthly, positive reinforcement. Two things here again: practice independence and celebrate progress. Practice independence first. Gently praise and encourage independent activities to help build confidence. The key here, though, is not to be too lavish. Little and often is good. Again, we need to remember that the child's concept of themselves is not of somebody who's amazing and competent and brilliant. So if we come in and say, wow, you did amazing, it was absolutely brilliant, that's not something they can embrace because it don't fit their script of who they are. There's a kind of emotional and cognitive dissonance around that means it's much less likely to be effective. But just gentle, subtle praise, little and often, is good. And by focusing on independent play, kids can start to physically and cognitively, by that I mean kind of consciously, mentally, disconnect from the parents or carers before reconnecting again when the adult is present or they start doing some together and resume some joint activity. And this repeated cycle of leave and return can help build a sense of safe absence from the parent in the context of constant reconnection. The things that makes the absence safe is the reconnection. And so it's not just exposing the child to more and more absence. That needs to be continually paired with more and more reconnection. So there is always a reconnection. It's just the length of the absence, hopefully, will increase over time. So practice independence in small ways. And again, let them help set the base around that and don't overstretch it. Celebrate progress. Recognize and reward efforts in coping with separations or changes. Simple behaviorism, much as I hate it, still has a place. Now, caution is needed here, though, to avoid linking any reward, particularly when we're, practicing independence, leaving the child for a while. We've got to avoid linking any reward to subjective feelings of distress or toxic disconnection. We don't want to leave the child for a while to help them learn and come back and celebrate the progress if the kid's in pieces because we didn't come back quick enough or we were away too long and they couldn't handle it. So again, being wise around that. But just gently encouraging progress of that kind helps to underline to the child that being alone, playing independently, or just being okay while the adult is absent, that ends in positivity if we celebrate praise. So not only does the adult return, but they do so with, a bit of positivity and praise and encouragement. So that's positive reinforcement. And then lastly, professional support. So there's two bits again, experienced input and support groups. In terms of experienced input, we can consider engaging with a child psychologist, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, or anybody who's clinically qualified, properly qualified, and specialises in developmental delays and attachment issues, and particularly works with children. Your local GP should be able to point you in the right direction, or check out the British Psychological Society, the BPS website. They have a Find a Psychologist tool. That can be a good place to start. If you just put BPS Find a Psychologist tool into your web browser, I'm sure the British Psychological Society page will come up. So even a short consultation with somebody familiar, it doesn't mean to a massive ongoing, massively expensive clinical relationship. It can be a one-off or a two-off, checking in, explaining the situation, coming back, gleaning some strategies and going on from there. If it's a complex situation or you don't have access to other input, that can be a way forward. So experienced input of that kind. And then support groups. So more informally, you can connect with community groups for caregivers and children facing similar challenges, just to share experiences and strategies, as well as, and I think really importantly, just to not feel alone in the struggle, because it can be quite isolating and absolutely exhausting if you've got a clingy, quite insecure, emotionally demanding child on your hands. The major fostering organisations might also be a good place to start, particularly a foster carer or an adopter. That might help. There are some links below around that to like Coram Bath, who used to be the British Association for Adoption and Fostering. There's a link to them and to the Fostering Network as places that you might start. So those are the 5 broad areas that we can help kids in. So consistent communication, use of visual aids, gradual separation practices, the emphasis being on gradual there, positive reinforcement, gently, and then, where necessary, professional support. And by implementing these kinds of strategies consistently and patiently, we can provide the necessary support to kids struggling with object permanence and foster a more secure and confident developmental journey as they try and catch up. So, final thoughts. I was practicing for many years with troubled kids before I cottoned on to the concept of object permanence. I'm grateful, as in many of these things, to my colleague Dr. Tricia Skuse for introducing me to this idea, and how important it is as an idea to child development. And it took even longer to think through and learn from others and read around, what we can do about it. So now I know what object permanence is, but, I'm a, whatever you are, social worker, foster carer, adopter, youth worker, youth justice worker, residential, whatever it is. Well, what do I do in my role about it? But once you see it, it can be really helpful in understanding what's going on for some kids and helping us to kind of steer our work in such a way as to help them recover. Now, of course, object permanence is part of a broader, more complex developmental picture, of course. But thinking through what it feels like to be a child who struggles to hold people and things in mind is a valuable insight, I think. In the end, as always, if you don't entirely know what to do, lean in, empathize, and be kind. Cheers, guys. I will see you in the next one.